As the US Senate is starting to draft new legislation around cryptocurrencies, the IRS is demanding information and attacking Coinbase and Bitcoin. At the same time, it seems that some leaders in the government may want to protect Bitcoin and Coinbase users and are demanding that the IRS submit their strategy around cryptocurrencies and digital currencies next week. Let's discuss. Hey everybody, I'm Gary Palmer Jr., you're you, together, welcome to Minting Coins. So in recent videos earlier this week, we were talking about the US Senate and this bill that we saw in the US Senate and how they're going to be changing some of the responsibilities away from the Treasury and the Department of the Treasury and how they handle some of these financial matters and how they handle some of these regulations, and shifting them under to the Department of Homeland Security, Customs and Border Protection Agency. This news, this information, I thought was really big, really important. The original document was taken offline from the Scribes website, and but it was still accessible from the link in the original article. But who knows for how long? And not that it completely matters, because we're going to be seeing so many different versions and iterations of what the Senate ends up with that they send to the other branches of the government to become law in terms of changing the existing regulation to include regulations around digital currencies, cryptocurrencies, and businesses like exchanges that operate in that space. Before then, we saw the IRS was sending letters to Coinbase demanding that Coinbase give the IRS the tax information on every single person in Coinbase who uses Coinbase, who has made any sort of transaction, no matter if it was over 3,000 or less than 3,000, the IRS wanted everyone's information. And to our support and to the credit of Coinbase, Coinbase said no, it was just too much information for too general of a reason. And so that was good, because instead of Coinbase just giving all of our information to the IRS without questioning that authority or without questioning those reasons, Coinbase said, wait, hold on, let's hit the brakes here, this doesn't seem right. And that helps protect us and our identity, and it helps create trust between the users and Coinbase, which I think Coinbase recognizes that a lot of people would turn away from Coinbase if we felt like we couldn't trust them. The name of the game is trust, right? The whole reason you're watching this video is because of Bitcoin. And what is Bitcoin? What is blockchain technology? It's peer-to-peer trust. It's the first time that not only can we exchange information across the world person to person, but the whole point of blockchain technology is that it's the first time that we can exchange trust across the world person to person. Coinbase is in the traditional old school way of doing things, where they're a middleman, they're an intermediary, and they're an institution that's standing in between the trust of any other two people in the world. And so if people can't trust Coinbase with their information and their money, then people aren't going to use Coinbase. And if you watch some of my videos, I feel as if Coinbase is still an exchange, it's still a third party, it is an intermediary. When you have your Bitcoins or your Ethereum on the Coinbase account, then Coinbase has your private keys, not you. And it's critical that you control your private keys and that you control as much of your information as possible, because this is your life, this is your future, this is your identity. And we have all sorts of hack attacks, people losing their identity. It's a real issue. People having to lose money or be responsible for money that other people stole through their credit. losing actual wealth or just losing their identity, it doesn't matter. In this digital age, we need to have some sense of control of who we are in the real world and who we are in the digital world as well. And so in the news today, what we see is that we see what's coming up, because we've had some senators sort of fight back against the IRS, and we've had it's really one senator and 2 representatives in the legislature, in the House of Representatives, and they're giving a little bit of pushback, and that pushback is going to help create clarity for you and I to understand the exact position of the IRS as it surrounds digital currencies, cryptocurrencies, and that sort of technology. We have an idea of where the Senate is going to be going with their first draft of their bill, and we saw in that bill would require the Department of Homeland Security, if and when that gets passed, if it gets passed with those points in it, it would require the Department of Homeland Security to define their policy. And so with this IRS strategy that comes out, we're going to be able to see the definition of cryptocurrency as seen by the IRS. So with that being said, let me just see if I have this ready for us, because I think I accidentally closed the link that we were going to go visit. Awesome. So with that being said, let's take a look at today's news. Let's just get some additional background on this information, just so you're aware of what's going on beyond just the headline, and let's discuss. Cool. So starting off at coinmarketcap.com, just taking a quick look at Bitcoin. Wow. So anyone that's been in the Bitcoin space, the blockchain space, for at least the past 2 weeks has seen Bitcoin go from less than $2,000 all the way up to around $2,800, and then we saw it crash all the way down to $2,100. And so if you're still with us about 4, 5, 6 days later, then you survived that crash of Bitcoin, and you survived that bear turn of Bitcoin, and now we see Bitcoin rising back up to the levels that it was before. Looking at the rest of the market, just seeing what I see here real quick. Past couple of days, Bitcoin sort of leveling off a little bit, Ethereum leveling off a little bit. Had a huge jump in Ripple. Ethereum Classic, pretty solid. When I see things stay solid for too long, or when I see something in a downward trend for too long, then I just wonder what's happening in the background and how long until it spikes back up. Because these markets are all going up and down, and it's just really interesting. We have Bitcoin, Stratus, and 49, 80%. Bitcoin's an interesting coin. It's sort of like Bitcoin. And Stratus, anything with an asterisk over here, I just have a lot of resistance to. The only coin that has the asterisk that I have any, strong positive feelings for would be Golem, and that's the technology that the Golem is in the process of creating is really interesting. But as I said before, the Golem team is awesome, and they've been really helpful for the community. So I have a lot of faith in that project personally. But moving on to the news, talking about Bitcoin. So the IRS is due to present its digital currency strategy to Congress next week. And so this headline is going to go around, and a lot of people are going to be seeing this and talking about this. And I just want to make sure that we dive into what this article is talking about and the exact facts, what's going on, just so we can have all of the details. I think that the general consensus from people in the community is that people aren't sure about trusting the government, and people aren't sure about trusting tax professionals, and it's sort of assumed that we're going to get over legislated and overtaxed, and while that might be leaning in a correct assumption, we still want to make sure that we know exactly what's going on, so we can predict the future a little bit better and just understand the context of the situation, the context of the headline. So the U.S. Congress is seeking the answers from the IRS. They want to know what the policy is of the IRS, specifically around the investigation into the Bitcoin tax avoidance. And so this policy is going to be coming out next week. When we say the U.S. Congress wants this, this is being led by a trio of lawmakers: Senator Orrin Hatch, and then who's of course a senator, and then two representatives, Representative Kevin Bradley and Representative Vern Bacana. Apologies if I'm pronouncing that incorrectly. And they're seeking specifically the IRS's overall strategy toward digital currencies in a letter that they sent them last month. And so this was a letter that these lawmakers sent to the IRS, and this information, these answers, are going to be due back to Congress by the 7th of June. So just a couple days away, which would be Wednesday, this coming Wednesday. And so we don't have any information from the IRS yet. And according to this article, the three politicians took a negative look, a negative tact toward the major IRS investigation into the digital currency exchange Coinbase that we all know and love. There's a link to Coinbase somewhere around this video. Take a look at that link. Consider signing up for Coinbase if you haven't yet, in case you were looking for a way to easily purchase and convert US dollars to Bitcoin, Litecoin, Ethereum. You can do that through Coinbase.com, even in New York. And so there's this quote here. I'll read this quote to you guys, where they said, and this is from these representatives of the Senate and the Congress, which is different than these two senators that released the other legislation that we were talking about. So this is a different group of people in the government. And they said, "We strongly question whether the IRS has actually established a reasonable basis to support the mass production of records for 500,000 people, the vast majority of whom appear to not be conducting the volume of transactions needed to report them to the IRS." So somewhere in there's limits in how much you need to be spending or transacting in order to report that to the IRS. I'm not sure what that is, those limits exactly. Quote goes on to say, "Based on the information before us, this summons seems overly broad, extremely burdensome, and highly intrusive to a large population of individuals." This is really strange. This seems to read as if these leaders in the government, these leaders in Congress, these politicians are looking to protect our privacy and are looking to protect our rights as citizens from the IRS. So not sure what's going on here, but it's definitely interesting. So and so this makes it more difficult for the IRS to conduct their plan of getting all of these records from Coinbase. They really want all of these records. And so the tax agency first went to court in November to seek a summons to access Coinbase user records, and just everyone's record from one year to another year, from one date to another date. They just wanted everything. And so the lawmakers' official roles. So what are these? What are their specific responsibilities inside the government? Because different people in the Senate represent different specific areas. There's 50 senators, but you might have a couple that are focused on intelligence, and a couple that are focused on education, and a couple that are focused on health. And so here we have Hatch, who leads the Senate's Finance Committee. Bradley leads the House of Representatives Committee on Ways and Means. And Bacana serves as a chair on the House Committee's Oversight Committee. And so others have also previously criticized the IRS's approach to digital currencies. And last November, the IRS's agency's own Inspector General called for a strategic overhaul, chastising the IRS over its current policies. So what's going on here? This is really interesting. So especially when you compare and contrast this to news from earlier this week about the US Senate and their draft legislation, which involves Homeland Security. In this case, we have the IRS and their strategies, and the people in, or at least these people inside our government, inside the United States government, don't like the way that the IRS is going about this. So you know, I'm not going to read into this too much. I'm just going to sit back and wait and see not only what this report says when this report comes out from the IRS, but I'm also going to wait and see how these specific people, these specific representatives and this senator react to the IRS letter and their strategy that comes out, and then B, to see how they react and how they respond to the future legislation which we will inevitably see come through the Senate. And so one of the main senators who was with the U.S. Senate legislation, that was Senator Dianne Feinstein, and I think Senator Chuck Grassley, if memory serves. And so those two are apparently drafting the legislation that would legislate Bitcoin across the entire country, and then these politicians are seeking to figure out the strategy for the IRS specifically. And so it's just really interesting to see these different players on our highest levels of government start to define and change and mold these different laws and regulations that are governing not just all of us on, you know, this major level of the you know, being citizens and non-citizens, or just coming into the country or out of the country, passing through a border or an access point, but then also the individual, the IRS. You know, this is going to affect what else? Law and judges, all sorts of things. And so how these different bills interact with each other is going to be critical with understanding how the overall direction of the legislation of cryptocurrency in our world is going to be headed. So with that being said, just wanted to go over this real quick. Just wanted to let you know that this is happening, give you a heads up so you can be aware. And when we get this information from the IRS, assuming that we get a copy of what their strategy is, we'll be reporting that to you. We'll be sharing that with you. Let us know what you think about this. Let us know what I'm most interested in. Do you think that these two different senators, these two different groups of senators and representatives, do you think that they're on the same page and are communicating with each other about their different perspectives on Bitcoin? Or do you think that they're working really separately and then they're going to be coming together later? It's going to be really interesting to see how this all plays out. And so I hope that you stay tuned. I hope you hit that like button, pound that like button. It helps me, it helps the channel, it helps all of us get this information out there. Don't forget to subscribe, and we'll be releasing additional videos soon to keep you informed of what's going on in this space. And until then, I'm glad that we're minting coins.